Okay, today we're gonna make a slab mug. And basically, unlike a coil pot where you roll out the coils and you make the mug out of the coils, we're going to make our mug completely out of slabs. So this is a slab pot. And basically the mug can be broken up into three different things. First of all, the handle. Second, the base. And then third, the outer portion. If you take this outer portion by itself, like leave the handle, like pretend I take the handle off, put it over here, take off the base, put it over here, I have left is the outer part of my mug. And if I take that and I open it up, it makes a rectangle. That's the first thing we're gonna start out with. The clay you wanna use is harder than the coil pot. Because you need a really soft clay when you make the coils so it doesn't crack, and when you bend them they don't crack, and also when you put them together they can smooth really easily with your thumb. However, with slabs we don't want our clay to be too soft, or else when you roll out your slabs they'll start to deform and become misshapen if it's too soft. So we use harder clay. You want it pretty hard. I don't know exactly how to explain that to you. Let me know if you have questions about that. But start with a good chunk first of clay. We're going to try to make the rectangle, you know, that part that was the main part of the mug. So get your clay, start wedging the clay out with the air bubbles. This will be really loud since the clay is harder. You want to start stretching it in a long motion because we want our rectangle to be long and skinny. So I'm just flipping it every time and getting those air bubbles out. Okay, so once we have that, we want to get our rolling pin and our 2 slabs of wood. Start from the middle of the clay. Don't start at the back, don't start at the front, start at the middle, because usually this is the thickest part of the clay. We need to roll that out first. So roll that out little by little. Turn it over every couple rolls. Don't sit there for a whole minute and roll back and forth. About every 6 or 7 rolls, just turn it over. And that'll help to stretch the clay a long ways as well. And it won't stick to your rolling pin. If you roll it too much, it'll eventually start sticking to your rolling pin, and that is not good. If that does happen, if it gets stuck to your rolling pin and starts to go up, stop what you're doing, take it off, flip the clay over, and continue rolling. Don't do it on the same side of the clay that you were just doing it on. Also make sure your rolling pin fits on these 2 rails, because we don't want our clay any thinner than this, or else it'll break apart when we start making our pot. Alright, so it's no longer rolling. I'm going to put this off to the side for a second. Next step, I already flattened this out, wedge that. We're going to make the base. So roll from the middle, turn it over until it doesn't flatten anymore. Okay. To use, the size that we're going to use for our base is about the size of a roll of tape. So put that down here. We want to be more precise when we're cutting this out, unlike our coil pot. Make sure your knife is straight up and down and not at an angle when you're cutting. We don't want to cut at an angle because we want our base to be straight up and down. So the slab outer part of the cup sticks right to it really nice. This does not have to be perfect, but I want it to take a little bit more time than we did with our coil pot. Alright, you can kind of smooth it out if you need to. Now we have that. Now we're going to go back to our big slab. Now we want this to be a rectangle, like I said. The first thing we need to do is we need to come up with a straight edge. So I'm going to go as far close to the side as I can, but I want to get rid of all these bad misshapen spots. So I'm going to go right next to those and cut a big long line so I have a nice straight edge to work with. Now our pot, I would suggest being at least 4 inches, 3.5 to 4, but let's just do 4. Makes a nice size. So with our ruler, we're going to measure from the straight edge put our 0 there, make a mark at 4. Now if you only have one mark, Mrs. Parsons, I measured, and I'm going to put this here. Well, sometimes you can, if you eyeball it, your ruler, my ruler's still on this mark, but look how lopsided. It's obviously not straight. So every time you measure, you always need at least two measurements. So I made the mark here. I'm going to make the mark at this end at 4, and I would suggest making 3. So make one in the middle just to make sure that they all line up and you didn't mismeasure. So line those 3 points up with your ruler. And make a nice even cut. Make sure your knife is straight up and down again. All right, so this is exactly 4 inches all the way across. The next step we want to do is we want to cut only one side. Do not cut both sides because we have no idea how long this is supposed to be. So try to make a 90-degree angle, try a right angle. Don't make it any skinnier because we want this to go straight up and down. So as much as possible, make a right angle. Now to decide how big we're going to make this, we're going to wrap it around our base. You can't see this, but well, maybe I'll turn this around. In the inside, I'm going to make a little line where my clay meets. All right, so I can cut it there. I'm actually going to give myself a little bit more space to work with, just in case I mismeasured. All right, so I'm going to go back and make sure I measured and cut correctly. All right, I did, so I'm going to cut this off because it was a little too much. All right, so here's our slab for our mug. Now, with slabs, this is one of the most important things. You cannot just put this together and smooth the outside. Because the clay is harder than the coil pots, we just can't smooth these together and call it a day, or else it'll fall apart in the kiln or after the kiln, or there'll be holes in it and the water will leak through, which we don't want to happen, obviously, with a mug. So every time you make a slab pot, you always need to do this step. It's called slipping and scoring. Basically what that is, let me get a piece of clay here. All right, so let's say these are the 2 pieces I want to put together, right like that. Wherever they touch, like right there and right there, you need to scratch the surface. You can either use your knife, your fettling knife, or your needle tool. I'm going to scratch the surface where they're going to be together. So there and all up here. They're just tiny little scratches. Basically, we're just roughing up the surface to help them stick a little bit, stick together a little bit better. So I'm roughing up that surface pretty well. Now, slip is watered down clay. This is the stuff we use to make the clay at the beginning of the year. It's that gross stuff that you would kind of find at the bottom of a pond. You're going to get a bunch of that. In your buckets, you should have a bunch of that clay plus water, enough water that it covers up all the clay in there. So you're going to get a little bit on your finger and rub a good chunk. If you if you don't put this on quick enough, it'll just dry pretty quickly. So within like a minute, try to put the slip on and then put it on your piece. So once this acts like a glue, so once you have the slip on there, you're going to put those 2 scored pieces together. And you have to push down rather hard to make them stick, make that glue stick really well. And then when you're done, you can clean up the edges with your finger. And now that stays together really, really well. So make sure, the most important thing is to push down and solidify that crease. And that's how you add 2 pieces of slab. So for our pot is going to be connected right here at the bottom all the way across. This whole slab will have our little score marks all the way across it, and plus this side of our mug as well. All right, so I'm going to score this whole thing. For sake of time, pretend I did that whole circle I'm going to do the same thing down here. You only have to go as far up as the thickness of this base. You don't need to make slab score marks way up here because the only thing connecting is right here at the bottom. All right, so pretend I did all the way down here because all of this will be connected to all of this. All right, so the next step, oh, and also these two pieces are going to be together as well. So we have to score this side. Like I said, I'm doing that fast, do that better. And this side. All right, put your slip on that. And all the way at the bottom.
Mallory Rutledge to the front office. Mallory Rutledge to the front office.
Wrap your pot around. Press firmly, make sure all the bases are sealed, especially at the bottom, wherever the two pieces of slabs come together. So really push those on really well. And then do the same thing for the sides. Okay, now that I've done that, then I can start smoothing it out because we do not want to see the seam there. If you have a little bit extra, just cut that off. So smooth that really well together. Do the same on the inside of your pot. We don't want to see a seam in the middle either because we don't want water to seep through there. We need to do the same at the bottom. We don't want to see any cracks. You're going to smooth all that out really well. Pretend I did the whole thing. Now, we have to do the same thing at the inside of our cup at the bottom. That's a little harder. You can get this tool works really well. The one with the curved edges to smooth. So you can grab these and smooth at the bottom. If that works for you, that's fine. You can also add get a little bit of softer clay and roll a tiny, tiny slab. You do not want a big slab at all, or sorry, coil. Roll a tiny, tiny, tiny coil because we just need a little extra clay to put at the bottom to smooth it out. So you can put this at the base all the way around the bottom of your mug where those two seams, those two pieces of slab come together to make the seam. And then you can take your tool and smooth that coil in just to solidify that seam and make sure no water gets through there. So use this as an extension of your finger because it's nice and curved and it won't scratch your clay or make holes in it. So that's basically how to make the start of your slab mug. Again, this is called slip, and scratching the clay is called scoring. These are slabs, and this is a slab mug. Later, I will show you how to pull a handle.